Hello, welcome to Awwwards Academy. I'm Rachel, the producer. Welcome to today's show. We're very excited to be doing another live jury website review here. So we are streaming live from Awwwards Academy. Awwwards Academy is our online e-learning platform for digital creatives with workshops, courses, and live sessions like this one. So hello to everyone in the chat. While you're here, please take the time to subscribe to our YouTube channel, and in that way you can be kept up to date with all the live sessions we've got coming up, and we've got quite a few interesting ones coming up, so you don't want to miss them. Okay, so yeah, let's meet today's jury. Let's kick off. Hello, jury. All right, okay, so there we've got Jonas Lempa. Hello, Jonas, partner and creative director at Taikonauten.
Hi, everybody. Very glad to be here today. Very happy to be joined by Steph and Andre. And hi to the community. I'm really looking forward to today's session. So thank you very much, Rachel.
Awesome to see you, Jonas. We know that you've all put a lot of work into today's session, so it's going to be a really good one, I'm sure. And we are very honored to have with us Steph Jeong, a designer at Twitter. Hello, Steph.
Hi, really nice to meet you guys.
Hi, Steph. It's lovely to see you. We were just talking before the show that the last time we saw each other was in Tokyo at Awwwards conference.
Yeah, it was amazing. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, so it's lovely to have you back with us. And I don't know what's going on with these slides. Here we go. Okay, so, and we've got Andre Ribeiro, creative director at RGMA. Hello, Andre.
Hello, hi everyone. Super excited to be doing this live streaming today. Awesome opportunity. Steph and I, we're both from New York City, so greetings from New York City. And, really excited to share some of our thoughts on this particular site.
Yeah, it's lovely to have you back with us, Andre. The last time we saw you was in New York in 2019 when you gave a talk for us at a conference about working for Squarespace.
Yeah, it was so long ago.
Yeah. Well, it's great to have you back with us. So, remember everyone, let's keep it nice and interactive. We've actually got Georgia from Big Horror Athens in the chat. So as well as asking the jury some questions, we'd love for you to direct some questions at Georgia so we can all, learn loads about the site. So have a good one. I'll leave you with Jonas and I'll see you at the end for the Q&A.
Thank you very much. What a great opportunity today to talk about today's website we're going to review. It's Wild Souls by Big Horror Athens from Greece. Hi, Georgia, and everybody who's part of Big Horror Athens. In this project, leading the design and also the branding, as far as I know, plus No Matter. Hi to Spain, I guess, right? They were in charge of the development of this very cool e-commerce website based on WordPress and advanced with WooCommerce. But before we are jumping into the details, let's have an overview. Andre, do you want to share with us what we are going to talk about today?
Absolutely. Thanks, Jonas. Yeah, so here's just a few highlights of the stuff we're going to be talking today. So one of the reasons why we picked the site, it was because it was an e-commerce site, right? It felt like, a lot of those reviews and a lot of the discussion sometimes when it comes to web design, it doesn't necessarily cover e-commerce, but, if you think about it, it's really a big part of web design, right? It's a big part of the web as a whole. So one of the reasons why we picked this, besides being a pretty cool site. And I think it also had this kind of very interesting relationship with the brand in itself. It's not just a cool site that kind of feels different from the product and the brand. So it felt very harmonious. So that's partially why we thought it would be cool to cover this particular site. And then, all the kind of more specific pages, like product detail page or a product overview page that felt like, even though, they're pretty standard pages for an e-commerce website, they have some interesting flares and it just looks very modern. and things like our direction as a whole, right? The use of color, the use of typography. How do they look into the photography as part of this whole look and feel? So we'll dive deeper into that. And then to me, I think obviously for all of us, I guess, copy is such an important part of the experience that, and then this site in particular has a very kind of fun style of copy of tone of voice that we wanted to point some of those elements out. But yeah, as I mentioned, color palette's going to be something I'm going to be talking about as well. But also some kind of more structural aspects of the site, things like how they handle the navigation and how they provide access to different portions of the site, and how the navigation can also be an opportunity to create something a little bit more kind of engaging. So as I mentioned, tone of voice and microcopy, they're kind of like in a similar vein. Typography is also part of like the general kind of look and feel that we're going to be covering about. And then as whenever possible, Jonas will help us kind of like look at the same experience both at desktop and mobile to kind of draw some parallels and see how those edge cases or those specific design details were handled for mobile.
Thank you very much, Andre, for this overview. I think all the visitors and the community is very excited, as well as we are. But before we are jumping into some details, the awards team also took a look at the performance of this website with 90 out of 100. It's very, very, very optimized. But still, every piece of work has some opportunities to improve. And we will also see a couple of things during our exploration of this website. For example, sizes of images and different image elements do not have explicit widths and heights. But we will see that in just a minute. So I would suggest that we are jumping into the website, right?
Sounds good.
Perfect. So I hope everybody is seeing Wild Souls. What's your first impression, Steph?
I mean, there's a very great, like, clear visual harmony that's happening with this very trendy, modern retail vibe. Like, you can notice these, like, friendly, organic look and feel, like, using some of these plants or, like, paper cutouts, even, like, the serif fonts like Canela. There's a very clear visual harmony there. I think you can kind of see how that's also reflected onto the product as well. There's this sort of like paper cutout and like the actual hand-drawn patterns are also reflected onto the product. So the first thing I really notice is like this very clear visual harmony.
Right. Yeah. And then this is like from a technical perspective, it kind of allows like some of the design decisions here of like keeping the photography clean and then using those those blocks of color. It kind of really allows for the content to be overlaid on top of it without needing to use like drop shadows or like overlays or anything that like those design tricks that kind of sometimes we need to use to make the content legible. So I think not only it's like a very pleasant art direction, but also very functional as well.
I think there's also very interesting things about like the copy too. Taste the wild, find your soul. I mean, in the beginning, like I think it feels a little bit vague. It would have been nice to maybe have some subtext, because I think without the product photos right now, like I wouldn't necessarily know what this site is really about just based on the text. But clearly there is a personality there. Clearly there's a tone of voice. So yeah, and it's very interesting.
Taste the wild, find your soul could also be some kind of retreat, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But at least it's also, it is giving us a very, very pleasant feeling, this overall look and feel, and also like these little details that you can really identify that somebody was really thinking a lot about a consistent brand experience. And this is this is a lovely approach in the context of e-commerce, where it's always like kind of this never-ending battle between conversion versus brand experience and presenting as well as selling. And so from this point of view, I think it's a very, very interesting balance. And for sure, we will take a deeper look into that later, even more. But I think there are also kind of obvious flaws somehow, right? Andre, do you have an opinion on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's and then that's going to be an interesting. Of course, we want to praise and kind of talk about the interesting things that are happening. But you know, as you mentioned, there's always room for improvement. So just a few kind of quick assessments of like some details here that it could have been better. So one big UX watch out to me here is really this newsletters overlay. A panel overlaying the cookie banner. You know, of course, they are meant to be, you know, once you kind of dismiss, it's going to go away. So it's not going to be there all the time. So it's a very short amount of time. But it just feels like a mistake, right? It feels like those kind of design processes where things happen at one, you know, like one after the other later on, and then it just kind of feels like it doesn't feel. I wouldn't think that, you know, it was envisioned at the beginning like that, and then at some point someone is like, oh, let's add the newsletters, module, and then, you know, didn't realize that this is kind of being positioned at the same place as the cookie banner. So pretty minor, but it's the kind of thing that it's important to pay attention to make sure that, you know, that it's, especially because that's the first time you're seeing the brands, the first experience. So those details, they matter.
Totally. From my point of view, for example, I personally I'm not the biggest fan of, let's say, arrows or scroll indicators in the first viewport showing in which direction you should scroll, because I think like the structure of it's a little bit similar like a car door, for example. Yeah, a car door also doesn't have an arrow to show which direction it opens, right? It's based on the shape and elements, the actual interaction, let's say, leads to a natural movement. Yeah, and so here it's a little bit like very obvious, and I think there's also a chance to build up a first viewport a little bit more engaging to scroll through it. But besides of these two little things, I mean, come on, the first impression is really, really, really cool with these bright colors and the combination of also very trendy fonts and forms. But I would suggest that we are scrolling a little bit further to this very interesting index page.
Cool.
All right, what we see here is a first module with an automatic scroll, let's say like this. Andre, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think that this scrolling actually, you know, there's always this discussion of like carousels and elements kind of auto scrolling, but and you know, if they're if they're good or not. But I actually think for this particular site, I think that the fact that, you know, the elements are kind of like it's slowly kind of, you know, passing by. And I think also in combination with this kind of like offset layout, it feels like a nice showcase of their products without feeling too overwhelming. So, you know, and then we talked about, you know, there's like some details of like when you hover, like it doesn't, the auto scroll doesn't stop right away. It kind of like slowly, like loses speed. So it feels very kind of pleasant to interact with. It doesn't feel like the combination of speed and how it kind of pauses. It felt like a very elegant implementation.
Yeah, it almost feels like you're kind of at the store, slowly browsing through, and then they have these moments of like focusing into individual product with these like color pills, which is quite nice. And like we also have a couple opinions, I guess, around potentially around the badge, but I think like the motion of like the badge turning as well as like this carousel turning is quite interesting. Although I think the information hierarchy is a little bit off for the badge specifically. Maybe Andre. if you have any opinions.
Yeah, I'll be the bad cop. Well, so I think it's one of those things that design-wise looks nice, but when you kind of actually get to read it, it doesn't read as it was intended to be, like no preservatives. So the thing that I read first is like sugar, preservatives, gluten, palm oil, and that's precisely the opposite of what they're trying to convey, right? So I think that that's just a graphic design watch out of like those designs where you have like 2 beats of like one, like two the content to be read in 2 moments. Just I think it's important to pay extra attention, and I think this case in particular, it just doesn't seem to be working as effective. I'm actually curious to see what the community also thinks about, if they had a similar impression. But one quick easy fix would be to have, like maybe on the center would be like natural ingredients, right? Or and then on the text around it having like no gluten, no palm oil, no. So it's like no matter how you enter, like through, if you start reading from the middle or start reading from the edges, it's a full message. You're not dependent on one thing to understand the other. So super minor. But
yeah, I think it's like one of those things that are like you have to see it in motion to really realize like that there's like a weird information hierarchy, because those things are very small text, but because they're moving, you clearly see them first, and then no kind of gets hidden, even though that's the biggest thing. So
yeah.
Very interesting.
I mean, look at this eye for details, right? We have the same pattern in the background when we are hovering, and there's a really beautiful connection of the actual product and the digital experience, and I think that's very cool. Also from content-wise, right? So it's wild souls, widely loved, the wild peanut butter and things like that. So there's a lot of details, which is just very interesting to explore and to experience. And one thing I just recognized is that when does the carousel starts and stops? So would be interesting if there's like some kind of indicator when the products start from position 1 again, because otherwise, I don't know if it's like 50 different products or just 5 different products, because it's also really hard to digest in this particular point, but just a little thing.
Yeah, or at least like at the end have like, I think Seth had some of those. This seems like an infinite one, so I don't think anyone's going to be sitting there like waiting to just right. Like I think the reality is that people kind of just cruise through the page much faster and just kind of like whatever calls your catch the eye, you kind of like dive deeper. But I do agree that if someone does want to see like how many products are there, like you might feel like, well, unclear of how many are there. So I think in a lot of those carousels, sometimes once you reach the end, you have like an action to do, like a see all or something like that. So that could be a solve for that.
I just recognize that all interaction buttons actually are on like black buttons, but somehow here it's not interactive, and here we have kind of a different hierarchy of CTAs. So we are actually, maybe the website is not educating the user perfectly how to interact with it, because we have also this little cute eye when as soon as we are interacting with the modules, and somehow you need a lot of time to actually learn what is interactive and what is actually just like, let's say, some kind of chic addition to have a better experience than that.
For sure.
Well, so let's move forward. Somehow there's nothing coming. Now we got our wild way. Andrew, what are your thoughts on this interesting module?
So so this one, I think it's like those kind of small design details that kind of makes a big difference. I think like I think they stacked photos is super simple, but it kind of breaks the grid a little bit and just makes it feel a little more organic. It is a little odd that once you scroll through them or click through them, they kind of just disappear, and then at the end it resets again. I think, having like a more infinite loop where maybe the card goes to the bottom of the stack would feel a little bit more elegant to me. But one thing that you were talking about, like this cursor, and I don't know if there's a term, like an industry term for it, but I usually call it like enhanced cursors, where something comes up, it kind of gives you additional information of what's going to happen. I think I feel like that's pretty recent. I mean, back in the day in Flash, people were doing that as well, but for some reason it's kind of like coming back. But I do think it's been very useful, actually. I think it kind of it doesn't feel gimmicky. It feels, and I think especially because people are not suppressing the native cursor. In the past, people would suppress the native cursor and replace with something else. I think now it's just an addition to it that I think it's I think it's super exciting, because like the eye kind of, symbolizing, kind of learn more, see more details, here being more of this directional guidance that I think is super useful.
Somehow it's also a little bit empty at the top, right? So maybe we are missing something, like the navigational part or something that guiding us through the actual website, right?
Yeah, it would have been nice to always have it accessible, also, just so that people can always access it and see the products. But yeah.
Boom! White like a nut.
So that section here, I'll continue being the bad cop, but that's the kind of misleading section where it's like, oh, that feels nice, feels fresh, it has like hover states, has all the bells and whistles, and it's really, like curved corners, like it has the kind of like nice design, like design wise, very interesting. But when you start kind of like actually looking into it, there are a few like pretty significant issues going on. Like, first of all, it's like, I'll start with copy. Like, this wild like a nut and 2 exclamation marks. It's like, it's cool, but it's like, what? Maybe we need like a subhead here, or like, it's not clear that. Well, I guess maybe if it was paired with like the discover our products through the 5 treasures, or it's just separate. It's not clear that this section is about the 5 ingredients, the main ingredients that we base our products off of, right? And then once when you started hovering some of those nuts, and it was interesting that you would expect that the content on the left would change, right? It's like I'm hovering sesame, I'm just gonna start seeing sesame products, right, or sesame seed. But for some reason, it just stays there. So it's kind of like, it's a little confusing as to why this kind of like hover doesn't impact the content on the left.
Yeah, I think even compositionally, it's a little bit confusing. Yeah, in terms of like the actual like typography hierarchy, it's kind of hard to know which one to look at first, whether one is affecting the other. It's very closely related, but there is definitely some confusion there.
I think Georgia and the No Matter team tried out a lot, so maybe they can give us some insights about what was the process of combining, let's say, these very beautiful design assets with these pills and rounded corners in combination with also, let's say, some kind of a collection of links, to also guide through different websites, through different sub pages. So it would be very, very interesting to learn more about how many variations of this module exist.
pull the Figma file.
Okay, so we have here words from the soul. Steph, what did you understand with that?
I think this is pretty much probably the testimonials. I think in the beginning it's not very clear. I think maybe if it had the obvious like quotation mark or was featured in a different way, I think it could have been a little bit more clear. I do see that there was like some sort of illustration with the mouth, and it was kind of alluding to the fact that it's a testimonial. But in the beginning, it was a little bit difficult for me to understand, oh, that's somebody's testimonial.
Yeah, actually, because also testimonials can be a very, very strong asset to underline a brand communication or the quality of a product, as long as it's not a fake one. but I think it's like a little bit underrepresented here because I mean, I guess the Athens Voice and the Greek Foundation can be pretty big press platforms, and so they are very, very spacious with all the other things. And here it's a little bit, let's say, underperforming, unfortunately. Therefore, something else is performing much more.
Yeah, so here we have a good badge. Like if you scroll up a little bit, just to not to be nitpicky, but this one, it feels pretty clear, right? Zero plastic shop. Well, zero plastic shop again, but it's just an example that the same design can depending on the type of content you put in, can go drastically to different directions.
Actually, also now that I'm seeing these like stacked images, since this is such an interactive part of this, I guess, module, I almost imagine that maybe at the very end of the card, like maybe there's a call to action to go into the page of concept store or something, so that we can like loop in the meaning of interaction and like actually turn that into an activity to go further in. But yeah, I mean, there is definitely something interesting about having this stacked element. I just think like potentially we could have made it a little bit more productive.
We'll also take a closer look to the concept store a little bit later. I mean, the sneak peek here is already very, let's say, very engaging, very tasty to go actually into the store. But let's have a round up more or less almost of the start page. We have here another modular approach to show some cross links. Any thoughts on that, or should we wrap up with the next module?
Yeah, I mean, this one, it just feels like that classic, like, oh, we got to edit that thing at the bottom, like just like, let's just put it in. But I think it's fine. It's, often those sites, you needed to have like the more granular information as well. What wasn't clear is like why Awwwards is, I guess the other ones are spreads, and then this one is a different type of dessert, type of food. But I think it could have been handled a little bit more elegantly. Of like, what is the relationship to the other products? It just feels a little bit more. It feels like an afterthought, like, well, now we have Awwwards, kind of thing. But it worked. I mean, because at least like the typography, the photography, all the elements are consistent. I don't think the general user, the general population would be like, what? Why there's a Awwwards here? It wouldn't be like that. But I think if you're talking about thoughtful structuring those products and kind of thinking the hierarchy of everything and the relationship of all those things, it feels a little bit like later on, kind of a later addition.
I think it also feels a little bit like the end of the website, because the fade in of next modules are always like timed a little bit late. Yeah, so there's a chance that at some point the users are drop out, which would be very unfortunately, obviously. So working a little bit on these timings. I mean, the fade ins or the animations are really beautiful, and really well timed. Within the modules, very, very, very well timed. But as soon as we are, let's see, as we can see here, coming to the next one, it's always a little bit late regarding that. But I think there's also a great addition of the wild recipes. Steph, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very interesting that they actually had created these like more interesting content around their product, and I think it speaks a lot to like how much they care about their product. There's also this very interesting reuse of like this component of carousel that's sort of done in a more dynamic way, because now this is more photos and it's more rectangular versus what we had before with the first product carousel. It was very like roundish and circular. So like it's clear that they're using these like components in a very dynamic way. That's quite interesting. But I guess we'll also talk about these recipes further later.
Yeah, but I think that's Steph. I think this is such an awesome observation of like how smart the design tweaks to it. Like, because that's something that, you know, often it's part of the negotiation when you're working with the development team, right? It's like, we want to design custom modules all the time, and then they were like, well, you know, but you know, it's the same kind of goal that this other one. Like, can we just? And I think this was an awesome way of showing that you can have the exact same component, just with some small design tweaks, and the content being slightly different. And it just feels completely different. So this page, if you think about it from a component perspective, there's like the carousel, there's the infinite carousel happening at least twice. They stacked photos at least 3 times, right? Like but it didn't feel like, oh, this again. You know, it didn't feel repetitive. So they did an amazing job of like being thoughtful on how the components should behave, and then by slightly modifying the content within, making it feel fresh and not repetitive.
And very important question to all the watchers and community. What's your most favorite recipe here and your most favorite product? Let us know. Maybe Wild Souls is sending out some products to all the watchers. So let's find out here. To round it up, we have here this huge footer, which combines everything at the same time. But, well, Andre, maybe you have some thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I actually, because I think often, I work in a lot of commercial sites, right? It's like corporate sites. There's always this thing of like, oh, you know, white space is our enemy, apparently, you know? So it's kind of like, it's always like, it's a battle of like letting things breathe, and, you know, and then I feel like you're at the bottom of the page, right? Like, there's no trade-offs. So I really like that it's very expensive. It's very airy. It covers, you know, like structurally feels nice, has all the main ingredients that you would expect in a footer, but instead of being treated like kind of like all tiny, and it's more stacked and has multiple columns. So it feels very open. And then if you scroll down, there's like this addition that is completely, you know, there's no functionality to it, like this kind of marquee at the bottom. But it kind of caps, you know, like it makes a very boring kind of section feel a little bit more exciting, and bring a little bit of the tone of voice again at the bottom. So it's just, again, super minor. Like I don't think no client would be like, oh my god, it's such an awesome footer, right? But for us, it kind of just gives that feeling of like the personality that was conveyed at the beginning. It's like carrying through all the way to the end.
So let's take a look at the navigation, right? So we have here this off-canvas. Oops. Let's wait. So we have here this off-canvas product overview with multiple levels. Steph, what's your thinking? Is this the right approach?
I mean, I think it's actually very interesting that they have such an in-depth menu system for their products. Like, I mean, this is like first and foremost the most important thing on the website. So I actually really like that they have this nice overview. One thing I also like is that there's like these small moments of like the actual product photography within the menu as well. So that's quite interesting. I did realize that there are multiple subpages based on what I just saw on the footer, but there's no access to those subpages on the menu, which is, I think, kind of unfortunate. But I think as for the product specifically, this feels like a nice overview of all the stuff that is needed for people to purchase.
Exactly.
It's a really clever use also of this full-fledged color. Yeah, so we have like kind of this overlay and reusing these different color patterns and really deep diving into the brand experience. A little usability flaw here at this point, now I am the bad cop, Andre. For example, like we have here this very cool second or even third navigational layer. The wild product is going through the product overview page, and somehow I do not have any indicator that this has the second layer, and the wild product is jumping to the overview. I think with a couple, you need to experience it before you understand it, and I think that's always kind of on the edge. It could also be on purpose. We have always the explanation that, well, maybe it's not everything clear, but we want to the user explore the brand and the product palette. So there can always be some kind of reasoning to find an explanation. Why is it built like that? But besides of that, I think that's a very cool overview. Even if the pictures are a little bit too small, since it's pretty hard to identify, okay, what's actually visually the difference between tahini and tahini with cocoa and honey.
Yeah, it could have been nice to actually bring those colors that they used to feature on the product.
Oh, as a hover, for example, yeah.
Yeah, that would have been a nice opportunity.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, so one thing that I want to mention about this menu is that, well, first time that I've seen this, I think it was the ESOP site that it wasn't the first time that was obviously introduced, but it was the first time that I've seen like kind of more the meteor kind of e-commerce website. And I think there's like, to me, it's super awesome to have access to multiple levels of the menu of product right away. And I think you can also quickly compare prices. There's a few things you can quickly do at a glance here that any other traditional kind of top nav navigation might not be possible, or those kind of like mega nav drop downs might be a little too clunky. So I think this one, it feels like, because it opens this kind of like folder, structure. It just feels like it's not overwhelming at first. It kind of unfolds. I think it's a very common pattern in like video games and other interfaces that I think it's just nice to see on the web. But if of course, it's not something you can use for every use case. I think, it tends to work better for when you have like a small number of products, right? Like you have suddenly one section with 30 products, another one with 2, then it feels like, well, it doesn't feel as balanced. But the last thing I want to say is that because it's treated as like moments like this, it's a very good translation. It's much easier to do a conversion of this into mobile, which I believe you want to cover at some point. But I think generally, just because it's treated as just in columns like that, you can much easily kind of break them apart.
Exactly. What we do not have here is actually the overview of the single product, which I think is a little bit of a missed opportunity because they are very strong on social media and very strong on brand experience. And I guess that a lot of people are coming from Instagram already on their mobile phone. And now they're forced to explore in a moment when you actually should be capable of having a better funneling to the actual product, I think. And so it's a little bit hard to identify what's behind here as soon as you're on your smartphone. And I think that I guess maybe Georgia can tell us a little bit about the percentage of how many mobile users are on it and how many coming from the desktop. But I think that's a little bit of a missed opportunity because you need to jump to the product overview page instead of having like kind of a direct guidance to the actual product, right?
I think even with this mobile menu also there's like a tiny UX flaw, which is like if you go into the product section, the back is now on the right side. It feels a little bit inconsistent because there was a close button on the left side. There's just these like small details. Also what you mentioned with like these double layers, like we use different colors for the web, but now it's the same color. So there's just like some inconsistency that's happening.
All right, so let's jump to the actual wild products overview page. where we get introduced by this beautiful picture again. But we need to scroll a little bit more to see a few of this huge range of products. Steph, what's your opinion on that and your feeling?
Yeah, I mean, there's a very clear usage of like the filters on the left as you see ingredients and nutrition. I think actually there's like, these are very clear categories, but I wonder if there could have been a little bit more work around like potentially grouping them or like sort of curating them in a way so that this is not just like a huge list of products, but maybe like we guide the users a little bit between the different products and like even potentially talk about why a sesame product is better or why a hazelnut products could be better for you, and like kind of like really sell the items, even if this is just like a simple overview page. So I feel like there was a lot of like a small missed opportunity in this specific page. Because I think the only thing the user will benefit from here is like just seeing the breadth of the types of products that they have. But I feel like that breadth is already covered in the menu. So I feel like if now that we have all of this real estate, can we do something a little bit more interesting to introduce some of these products in a more interesting way?
For sure. And this is how the product detail page looks like. So full-fledged background. So we are completely within the corporate design of the design of every single product, with a couple of cool details. Andre, you maybe want to cover?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, I'm a sucker for this kind of like product stay in the middle, just sticking and then the content kind of going left and passing by left and right. I think that's a super cool. I've seen a lot of like gadgets and tech devices, like that. It's like it's in the it's kind of in the center. The main product is in the center, and then the rest of the content kind of scrolls on both sides. But I think it was a super interesting application for like an edible product. I guess it doesn't matter like what type of product, but I guess I've never seen for this particular type of category this use, and I thought it was it doesn't feel gimmicky. It feels very intentional to kind of have this paired with other pieces of information and kind of being this connecting thread between like kind of more the main facts and the nutritional facts and kind of like the more specific type of information, but also to more aspirational to the recipes. So it feels like you're going through this journey, and the product's kind of leading you through it. So it's a very subtle but a very effective way of kind of experiencing the product.
I think I don't mean to be a bad cop here, but I do, and I do love the stickiness of this product. But I wonder if there was like the add to cart button could also be like a sticky element in a way, because at the end of the day, like this page is to sell this product, and the most important call to action should also be something that should be accessible at any moment. But it's just a very small change to what they have here, I guess.
I found another small thing. So it's a small but big thing, because as soon as you're adding to the cart, it takes a couple of seconds, and it's now, and now we have it in the actual cart. But the card at the top is not updating. So there's still 0. And in connection with this loading time, plus that there's like no micro animation helping me that something is added to the card. It's again 5-6 seconds. And then it's coming here, plus with the combination of the number of the card is not adding. I mean, these are, on the one hand side, we have like this super cool adaptable corporate design, which works like with there's really nice design elements work on every color of what is Wild Souls working with. On the other hand side, it's there's a 0 card even if I'm adding another product. And especially like the loading times for mobile experience, it's very crucial, because as long as it's like when it's over 1 second or something like that, there is like these bouncing rates increasing up to 50%. Yeah, and I think that's very, very, very important details to really think of those things. Again, as Steph just said, it's not only about the brand experience, but somehow it's also about selling, of course. And I think these are things which you will find out when you have kind of an intensive testing. Yeah, I'm very sure that they did a very decent job, of course, but sometimes something needs to go online in the first iteration very quickly. Maybe the one or the other browser wasn't tested for 100%, and then things like that can happen. And in this context, it's very important, from my point of view, to work iteratively on these products or projects, right? Having some kind of filled up backlog, having the possibility to talk about priorities and updating it step by step from procedure side.
Yeah, I think where you're talking about processes, internal processes of like improving the website, I think it's super interesting. And that's something that, in larger agencies, you usually have like a QA team that would quickly catch those things, right? Because it's really not like a server request call perform. It doesn't seem like be that kind of problem. It seems like an implementation, like, the delay is too long for the product to come in. I might be wrong, but that's something to kind of to. But yeah, so I think that's a very interesting point of like, I think for smaller agencies, kind of having that, even though you don't have established discipline to do the QA kind of comb through the site through multiple browsers and kind of poke around and see what's broken. I think coming up with internal processes of how to kind of cover that, like do split, like at Squarespace, we would sometimes do like one person would kind of QA the site on a page on one device, and kind of like try to break it as much as you can, and like each person would you kind of divide and conquer, and kind of people would kind of have this backlog, and we can kind of keep track of all those micro things that are not working, because this is really not, it's a very small thing that should be easy to fix, but it can, to your point, can really hurt the conversion, can really be like a dropping point where the person like click add to the cart, nothing's happening for 10 seconds, like, well, like never mind, like so it's a small detail that can be pretty can go against your main goal of selling products.
I really want to have one of these energy balls here. I mean, the photography and the whole art direction is just like beautiful and so consistent, right? And I think that's also chance to look behind the products, and I think that they are doing a wonderful job saying or talking about behind the scenes and talking about details. And I think Steph, you have some great insights or great thoughts on that, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that's very apparent throughout the website is like this tone of voice. They do a lot of effort to try to come off in a way that's like fun, quirky, and like with a very, very strong opinion. And like even here, like the most important thing for us to give you is the opportunity to choose sides. Like to say that we want you to choose sides, and we want you to come with this type of like beliefs that we have is like a very strong statement, I think. And I think this is one of those things like that a lot of like modern retails also have, is like this strong manifesto, which they also have, like saying things like fuck plastic, and we care about the environment.
Beep.
And, yeah, beep. But yeah, like the amount of effort that they're putting in to just go that extra mile to show like their beliefs is something that is like very apparent throughout the site. And I think that is like a big part of what makes a brand too. So it's quite interesting to see these things.
Yeah. You can even see like little statements like "we eat with our fingers" within the logo, which is actually one of the things with one of these great products. So I mean, this is also important having this smirk and having this chance of really engaging people with the small things, additionally to the beautiful overall experience. But Andre, you also have some deep thoughts on that, correct?
No, I think it's like, I think this is an interesting transition to like, because we've been talking about like very specific elements of the site, and now kind of like talking about the beliefs and the people behind, and so I think it's like awesome transition to some of those kind of more abstract brand elements that we want to cover at some point as well. But yeah, I think just the sheer fact of just having the owner there, right, and like it speaks to a newer generation that cares about products that have some sort of soul and have some principles behind, rather than just being used for tasteful, right? I think it's like this. It can be. It's definitely challenging to do, like in an honest way. But I think usually smaller products or companies where the founders heavily involved, I think you can really bring some of that DNA and that philosophy into the whole experience. And I think that's basically, long story short, I think the site is doing a great job of like expressing that in an honest way. It doesn't feel like contrived or anything like that.
I think the founders as well as the designers took a very important focus on this target group of lifestyle and lifestyle of health and sustainability. This LOHAs, which are very interested in the behind these all background information. Where does the product comes from? What is different here? How can I, even if it's just a little bit, but how can I influence something much bigger? This is manifesting here very, very good. Even if it's a little bit too much text at one point, to be honest, I'm stopping reading just from design wise. I think a little bit less can sometimes be much more. But this is just my personal experience. I think what is important is, of course, the content and the context of it, which is also manifesting beautifully within the concept store, correct?
Yep.
Which is loading right now. It's a little bit slow from my side. I mean, Greece is closer to Germany than to New York City, but anyhow.
Yeah.
Well, so I think the concept store page, and we're going to be talking about the photography as well, and the physical store. But I think it's really it kind of speaks to this very cohesive brand where a lot of the elements that are happening on the website are also happening on the store. And so, of course, the use of oranges and the use of the canela, serif font, the use of plants. So it really feels like, I would imagine the store kind of came out before the website, but it feels like they really complement each other very nicely. So kudos to both the interior designer and the web design team for having such synergy, and then kind of understanding their disciplines and their limitations, but at the end of the day, creating a brand and an experience that really, seamlessly transitions from one to another.
And there's a beautiful incarnation of philosophy in products, and we quickly shortly already talked about that, is actually a content marketing part, which couldn't be more underestimated in this context. And Steph, I think you have some great thoughts on that too, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is really interesting that they actually created these different recipes around their product. It goes more than just like, here is our product, but here is also ways for you to like enjoy it in a healthy way and improve on the product that we have and really make it yours, kind of thing. Actually, like, of course, like they put a lot of great thoughts into making this photography great and all of these other things, but going that extra mile of like creating this content around the product, I think is definitely part of the brand experience, and it's very interesting.
Yeah.
I would like to call this somehow the incarnation of really the products and how beautiful designs there are, plus with the philosophy they're trying to share. Having these very, very clever crosslinks here too, where they're decoding their recipes with a direct link to the product pages. So we have some kind of we at Taikonauten always call it some kind of anti-dead end teaser or something like that. So there's like no static end, but really cleverly combined the not necessarily super deep website, but very with a big width, and now connecting these single pieces in a very very elegant way.
Yeah. One suggestion that we had for this particular type of content, and that's one that could be like one of those things you can just keep in a backlog, and if you do have time and you want to continue improving, would be to, I think there's an opportunity here to have a more of a social component. So I think recipes right now, they're very curated, they're beautiful, they really speaks to how the product can be used and gives kind of this endless possibilities kind of view on their products. So it's not just a spread, right? You can do so many things with it. That I think in that regard, I think it's like really working. But I think there's also an opportunity here to engage with the community, right? It's like submit your recipes, or even have like a small thing that I would potentially add is just that you see in like a lot of cooking websites, like the author of this particular recipe, right? Jonas,
of course.
Exactly. But it just feels like you have the official brand kind of point of view and tone of voice, but I think recipes are usually often something that you can have a little bit more of like multiple perspectives, multiple personalities, and an opportunity for people to start engaging on the conversation. Like, oh, I tried this. Did you do like this awesome dessert with your, and then it just becomes a two-way street.
We are just about to jump into the Q&A, but before we are doing that, I would like to ask both of you with one sentence, why do you think this website is site of the day? Yeah, what was the reason for that from your personal point of view? Steph, maybe you want to start.
I think it's actually because it's like very on trend right now. It has that really interesting pop of color, and it really speaks to the younger audience right now, as well as like it's not just the website experience, but you can see like in their products and their concept store, it goes sort of beyond that, and I can see that could be interesting for a lot of people right now.
Andrew, your perspective.
Well, I mean, I think it's just a very well-rounded experience. It speaks to the brand, speaks to their tone of voice, speaks to their mission, and then it used all the web kind of technologies and resources and kind of kind of techniques to convey that. And so I think it was a very technically speaking, I think it's very well executed. But I think beyond that, it kind of did a great job of carrying through this brand DNA into the web. And I think it's like, and especially because it's a commerce website where a lot of times people tend to default to kind of cookie cutter, out of the box kind of solutions where things might feel a little bit more blocky and rigid. And then suddenly you have this very kind of airy, very modern, with beautiful typography. Solution for a similar problem.
Steph, Andre, thank you so much for all these insights. Welcome back, Rachel. I think we have a couple of questions, so please let us know.
Hello, thank you everyone. That was awesome. That was very interesting. I particularly like the way you were passing around the bad cop persona. Nice touch. Okay, yeah, so we've got some questions from the YouTube chat. Okay, yes, so we had a question. Do you feel this website is prioritizing brand experience over conversions?
I think that's oh, go ahead.
Steph, please.
I think it's very interesting that there is this very obvious trend that's happening with this modern retail. there's like a huge wave of these like new brands that are coming out who are trying to be very like who have very strong personality. And I think right now, to my personal opinion, is that it is bridging closer to like sort of following that brand for like the right reasons too, because they need to speak to that younger audience, and they need to speak to that audience that care about the organic look and feel. And like trend doesn't always mean that it's like a bad thing. It's just like finding that right balance of speaking to your audience as well as like showing what's really unique about you. So it is like right on the verge, I think, of like playing that balance pretty well. But yeah.
At the end, maybe just one quick addition. At the end, this is the question. This is chasing the holy grail, finding the perfect balance between brand experience and conversion. And I think you need to take your time, make your research, learn about your target group. What are their needs? What are their goals? How can we help them with solving their urges? At the same time, how can we balance the business with and the brand experience, especially on the long time, especially with long time goals. So I think we need to continue to keep this fight going on, and hopefully somebody is going to find this holy grail.
For sure.
Okay, thank you. And another question in, what is considered trendy?
That's a very loaded question, I think, also. I think trend basically happens because like there's a clear need of like people looking for different things, and then somebody like finds like a completely new thing, and then it performs really well, and then everybody starts to follow that path a little bit. And that's why like trend isn't always bad, because it's clearly answering that user need that Jonas was talking about. But I feel like it's like a weird battle that you always have. Like if you make something trendy at one point, like right now, you would gain a lot of trust and gain a lot of popularity by following that trend. But like once that trend is gone, like does the trust also go away? And like so like you also have to think about like how do you make your product last but also be like trendy in a good way. So yeah, it's a loaded question, but a lot of things are considered trendy at a certain time, I guess.
Yeah, and a little bit of a tangent answer to that, but I do think that, to me, like the trend, I think Steph was saying, like it doesn't necessarily always mean it's a bad thing. And I think a good rule of thumb to me is like, does that really speak to the company's principles and mission, and does it feel honest, right? I think a lot of times you see a trend, you see like a corporate company doing like, text with just a stroke with outline, right? And it just feels like, it feels a little off to you, because, it's not, and this is just a silly example, of course, but, like sometimes some of those trends, they have some meanings behind it. There's like some reason. It's like a specific art movement or a specific cultural movement that people are rallying, like brutalism or why not, right? There's a bigger trend, but there's something bigger, broader, that if you don't relate to that specific trend or the specific movement, then your use of those trendy design patterns feel contrived, and then people can easily pick it up, right? Like people are not, like we are talking to a generation that it kind of like inspired this kind of shift in design and the shift in mentality. So it might look fine, it might look nice at first, but if you don't really relate to that particular movement, then it feels contrived.
Yeah, and I think there's like always this battle, even especially for designers, like wanting to make something completely new, but technically nothing in design is new, I think. And then, speaking to the audience who are looking for a very particular thing. So like, I think it's like an internal battle a lot of designers have. And I'm sure like Jonas and Andre can also speak to that. But yeah.
I think it's also important to know when it's the end of the trend. Yeah.
Yeah.
because I think we have I mean, this is a beautiful design and a beautiful overall experience, but I don't know how many millions of manufacturers, handmade manufacturers we have on this world since the last couple of years. So let's see what's bringing, what's the next call. And dear community, please show us what's the next call, what's the next big trend you are working on, so we can explore new and crazy things.
Okay, thank you. So what would you add to this website?
Well, maybe I can jump on this one because we kind of briefly talked about. But I think, yeah, the social component, I think that's the main kind of gap to me right now. And again, it doesn't, for sure, it doesn't, I think for its main objective of selling products and telling their company story, I think it's, I would give, 9 out of 10. I think now it's more of like kind of backlog and like V2 of the site. What would we like to add to it? I think social component and more of this conversation with the community. I'm not saying necessarily like that, those kind of like, embedding the Instagram like strip with like the latest photos. That's kind of like every site does that. But so I think there's more subtle ways of doing that. But I think just opening up so it doesn't feel like a monologue. It feels more of like a two-way street conversation where people, customers, and the community as a whole can kind of start participating and really pushing, because then it's not just optics, but I think it's also like that's how your brand evolves, right? Or you can start listening to how people are reacting, and I'm sure they're probably doing some other channels, their social channels in some other places, even in the store itself. But I think the website, a good addition would be to kind of open up this conversation channel.
And checking analytics. What does the users look for, and what are the things they need or they're looking for? Again, I imagine that a lot of users are coming via mobile, and so I think that there's some kind of potential to optimize. But that's again the perfect basis to go into these iterations and grow and grow and grow, and become better and more user-centered. Yeah.
I think to Jonas's point, like there's a small, like the end of the loop kind of things that are kind of missing from this website, like, paying more attention to what the actual adding to cart experience looks like, and like sort of closing that full-on loop of like bringing the product into the actual purchase cycle. I think that would be something that I would push a little bit forward. But those are like very small things if you think about it in the grand scheme of things as a website. But
bottom line
too.
Bottom line, this is a freaking good website and a great experience, and we are talking about the last 10% or whatever. So keep doing stuff like that. Thank you very much for enlightening us and making the web, the internet a little bit better.
A better place.
We had a comment from Andrea Puccini, who said that, I believe that an e-commerce is not just a product to be launched online and left alone. Analyzing data, A/B testing, and other activities can be constantly inserted to implement the user experience.
We can underline that, I guess.
Thumbs up, +1.
+1.
Well, I mean, that's another thing. I guess maybe go back to processes. I think that's I think I love that we have slightly different experiences. I've worked in a lot of like large agencies, so it's you take for granted sometimes. Like there's one person just doing that, right? Like this person like sitting all day looking at analytics, bringing your reports and all that stuff, and actionable items. Like we should do this, we should do that. I think. But I also feel like a lot of smaller studios started thinking about that as part of the process and how to kind of wear some of those hats and really understanding the value. I think we understand kind of generally, like, yeah, it's good to kind of have a finger in the pulse, but like, spending some time and kind of combing through the data and kind of and understanding on how to generate insights out of those numbers and create actionable items to be added to your roadmap. I think that will make the relationship with the client much more meaningful and powerful, right? Because then you're adding value not just during launch, but you're constantly reviewing.
Pretty sure that there's some kind of course on the Awwwards Academy, Rachel, correct?
Oh yeah, we've got everything up there. Quite a nice, we've got a nice comment from Petros, one of the makers. He says, thanks for the comments and the jury for picking the project to be reviewed. It was a really unique experience having our work reviewed by specialists in the industry. And they commented earlier that it was nice to get a more global perspective as we're coming at it from, different countries, and you have different approaches to how you're viewing the content.
Definitely.
Okay, well, unless you've got any other comments you'd like to make about the site, we're going to wrap up.
I think we can, I would like to underline or to double check that creating website like these, combining trends with usability and user centricity, never forgetting for whom is this experience, not only for the designer, him or herself, but for so many potential users. And when you're looking through the website reviews from the last couple of months, I think you have the users and watchers have a lot of input and assets to create the next website of the day or site of the day or site of the month. So for sure, a great way to learn from it. And for sure, also thank you, Steph and Andre, for your amazing insights. I mean, I learned a lot. Thank you for that.
No, thank you. I mean, this was like really great and super fun for me to just actually like take a part in like dissecting a website with both Jonas, Andre, and the rest of the people who have joined. So it was a great experience for me. Thanks.
Yeah, same thing for me. Just to kind of echo everyone's sentiments, just really appreciation for the Big Horror Athens folks. Especially I think because it's not necessarily an agency from like the more kind of the usual suspects. I really like that we picked it. We found something like so kind of top notch. Like the best of web design you can think of today. Coming from Greece. So kudos to you guys. Keep pushing and think. I have learned a lot as well. So I appreciate for you guys to be putting out such amazing experiences.
Okay, yeah, so that's all for today. Time's up. Massive thank you to Georgia and Petros for joining us. It's really a pleasure to have the makers on board. So if you enjoyed this, and I'm sure you did enjoy this, then you should tune in next week at the same time, because we've got another live jury website review with an all-star lineup of Celia Lopez, Louis Paquette, Louis Anser, and of course our president of the jury, Jonas Lempa. So definitely tune in next week for that. So that's all we've got time for today. So thank you so much, Jonas, Steph, and Andre. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you too, Rachel. Great job. Thank you. And to everybody, also Awwwards team, great opportunity. Let's continue, create great stuff, right?
Okay, thanks for tuning in, everyone, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye. Have a good day.